Good afternoon and welcome to the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce. I know that many of you are probably complete strangers to the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce, which is dreadful, but an extra welcome to you. 25th, that's where Sweden ranks in the global AI index as ranked by Turdos Media. We dropped from 17th in 23 to 25th last year, and it measures access to talent, research, infrastructure, and government strategy. And speaking of government strategy, Sweden ranks 57th out of 83, just behind Iran, Ghana, Rwanda, and Mauritius. Welcome to our initiative Capital of Tech, where we discuss the endless opportunities of Stockholm as a tech center, its challenges and its potential. For over 2 decades now, Stockholm has cultivated an absolutely exceptional tech startup ecosystem with pioneers such as Spotify, Skype, Klarna, iZettle, King. You know them all by name as well. They have transformed and disrupted their industries, and Stockholm has created somewhat of a global phenomenon. But we know that Stockholm is a fantastic tech capital today, but how does it remain so in the future? How do we thrive in the next decade and the decade after that? So why tech for us, a sector-agnostic business organization? Well, for us, the tech industry, its community, and the tech capital is a necessary source of oxygen and a source of innovation into the wider business community. We say that a healthy tech ecosystem is a sign of a healthy and, not the least, an optimistic city. My name is Peter Sandberg, and I'm the Deputy CEO of the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce, and I'm delighted to see so many of you here showing an interest in AI. That is why we're here, and that's what we need to talk about as well. At the Chamber, our mission is to make Stockholm more attractive, more competitive, and more innovative, quite simply making Stockholm the greatest capital region in Europe. And we take our job very seriously. Now, whilst there are many unknowns about AI and its long-term potential, it's clear that it comes with great opportunities for both Sweden and for Europe, if done in the right way. In the next hour, we'll have Google's latest report on the AI innovation opportunity for Sweden presented. We'll discuss the state of AI in Sweden and in Europe, by all means, and we'll dive into the potential of Nordic collaboration, a hot topic over the last couple of years. But first, to set the scene for the next hour and start off our conversations, we'll be hearing from Mathias Sundin, Editor-in-Chief of Warp News and member of Sweden's AI Commission, welcome up on stage, on the main findings of the report, which was published to the government in December as of last year. Welcome, Mathias. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. The report is 75 different proposals, so of course I can't go through all of them. But I thought I'll start by sort of where the Commission started, some starting points for the Commission in its thinking, and one was that one was unprecedented speed. Of course, the AI technology, is progressing at an unprecedented speed, but also the adoption of the technology is at an unprecedented speed. So that's the first starting point. The other was that what Peter mentioned, that Sweden is falling behind. We're usually pretty good at these kind of transitions, but we missed the start here, and it's not like we're trying to or catching up now, moving really fast to catch up. We're actually falling behind. So that was the second point. And the third starting point, and maybe the most important one, was that the realization that AI now is for everyone. AI is now for all of us, because it is based on human language, our natural language. And since we all have that language, so that means that everyone with an internet connection can suddenly use AI. And let's just think about that for a minute. Our language, it's quite more genius than you think about when you just use it. So, of course, we have this structure with letters and words and rules how to put them together in a sentence. That's called syntax. But the genius in that is that I can say a completely new sentence. If I just follow these rules, I can put together a completely new sentence, and all of you would still understand what I'm saying. So everything that's in my head, all the ideas, thoughts, ideas for solutions to problems, whatever it is, I can translate it into language, and we can talk about these things. And that of course is immensely important for humanity. And if we compare that to how computers and machines used to be, we could not just say anything using our language to talk to them, because then it would be syntax error. They wouldn't understand anything. But suddenly we can do that. And when you think about how important language has been for humans, and what would we even be without this language? I'm writing a book on AI now, and so I interviewed Steven Pinker, who's a professor at Harvard and written several books on language. So I asked him, what would humanity be without the language that we have now? We would be chimps. That's what we would be. So that's how important language has been for us. Imagine what a breakthrough it is that we now can use that language to talk to computers and they to us, and they could use that language to talk to each other as well. So that means that AI is now for everyone. So that was the third starting point for the Commission. Out of this came 75 proposals, but one of the things we did was not a proposal, it was the delivery of the report. So we had 18 months to deliver the report. 18 months in AI time is, I don't know, 18 years at least. So we thought, what the hell, we're going to deliver this in the summer of 2025. It's like whatever we write at the beginning is going to be completely outdated later. So we decided to deliver the report early. So we called up the government and said, hey, we want to deliver the report early. They say, do you want to deliver it later? No, earlier. Okay, that's never happened before. Theoretically, it could be, thanks. Theoretically, it could be possible. So they said, yeah, okay, go ahead. So we delivered in November here. One of the 75 proposals is what we call the AI for all reform. So we want to give free access to these AI, to the generative AI tools, to all Swedes, the paid versions of them, to try it out, but especially get to the regular use of these tools for a limited time, of course, not for forever. And we borrowed a lot of this, both inspiration and logic, from the 1990s and the home PC reform, where Sweden subsidized PCs for families. And one wouldn't think, or really the beauty of that reform was that we didn't say to people, you can get this computer for half price, but you must promise to be really productive and only do important work things with it. You know, no games or anything like that. We didn't say anything like that. We trusted people. If they get a computer and an internet connection, they will probably do some good things. Some kids will play computer games, but that's fine. And some kids did. One kid, whose name is Marcus Persson, he used his mother's home PC to play games, probably all night. Should we subsidize that? Yes, that was really good, because out of that came Minecraft. And Sebastian Siemiatkowski, the founder of Klarna, his parents were able to buy a computer that way. They couldn't afford it otherwise. So that's brought that kind of technology into his life earlier, that eventually led to the founding of Klarna. And we have similar stories with Skype and Spotify. And in this report, I think 32 unicorns that came out of this, things we did in the 1990s. And why we can borrow this logic is because the logic is the same now. If we get people very broadly in Sweden to use these tools, we will get these kind of benefits. You will have the productivity and efficiency gains, absolutely, but also the unsuspected things that you can't plan ahead, those kind of things. So if Sweden can turn some of the really late adopters into early adopters, we will get these benefits. And it could be the obvious things that we more efficiency in public sector and in companies, of course. But I'm mostly eager for the completely the things you can't even guess now. The new Minecrafts and Spotify and Klarna and all that. So it could be a nurse somewhere that's really fed up with the schedule at the hospital she works. And she brought this up in several meetings, and they say, yeah, absolutely, it sucks, but we have this software system called Millennium or something. And, you know, this is the schedule we get. And before generative AI, she had to learn to program and do all these steps to be able to do anything about it. But now she can just use her natural language and create a new scheduling tool, and maybe convince the hospital to use it, or if they don't use it, she can start a company that, you know, and so these are the kind of things, if we turn the people who maybe would have been late adopters into early adopters, and that's the idea of the AI for all reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Mathias. Mathias, you say AI for everyone. What has the government response been?
Well, not that much so far. They've, you know, made a few decisions here and there. They were fast in sending in all the paperwork to get one of the data centers, the AI factories, and all that. So some good signs. But lately, things have been moving really, really slowly. I'm trying to talk to them and understand what's going on, and there I see proposals moving, but they need to send this out now to get comments on it. And so we really stress that, you know, you should deliver many of these things. You should now in the spring budget. That's very unlikely to happen. Maybe a few other things, but.
Well, we have the Minister for Digitization here in April for dinner, so we'll make sure to hold them accountable. Yep. Matthias, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on, and so whilst waiting for the Swedish government's proposals for an AI strategy, today Google is releasing a report into the AI innovation opportunity here at the Chamber, looking into how Sweden can scale innovative digital businesses using AI. And to present the report, I welcome up Martin Thelle, economist and partner at Implement Economics Consulting. Martin, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure to be back in the capital of tech. I'm from Copenhagen. I'm here to invite you into a deep dive into what we come to call the innovative digital businesses. And this report, which I can't kindly borrow from Patrick of Silo AI, he has been reading it on the plane all his way coming here. So it sits on top of research that we released last year on the broader economic opportunity of AI. So there's sort of an overreaching report on that topic, estimating a potential for Swedish GDP growth from adopting generative AI within a rapid adoption period of sort of getting to widespread adoption in around 10 years from now. And that could contribute 9% to Sweden's GDP. So there's a massive opportunity. What we wanted to do with this report was to look at more at the how and are we getting there at speed. And sort of the best lens we thought to put on that would be to look at the new and innovative companies that are adopting and working as some of the first movers with the technology, and see how are they doing in Sweden. And I think this is a very important lens to put on, because it goes right into the core of Mario Draghi's analysis of Europe's competitiveness challenge and the innovation gap that we are having in Europe. So a major challenge for Europe in terms of driving its productivity, for having the possibility to finance all the things that we need to finance in coming years. Then productivity is at the heart of that, and our innovation gap is the core problem. And within that, our ability to absorb the newest digital technologies and turn that into something that works for real. And that's where these companies come into play. So first, I want to broaden your concepts a little bit, because words are forming conversations, and conversations are forming the way we think and induce us to act in certain ways. So I would ask you to forget the word tech startups. It's yesterday. Now we need to broaden our mind to think more broadly of innovative companies in all kinds of businesses. And we need to move not only from tech but also away from only startups. Of course, startups are important, and it's where it all started. But we need to be as curious and focused on what it takes to move them to the next level. So, broadly speaking, 1 in 10 of the startups make it to what we would call the scale-up level. From the scale-up level to the grown-up level, where it really starts to work, only 1 in 20 make it. That's sort of the broad funnel of things. So we have tried to dissect how Sweden is doing on these various aspects. And I should say, all of this in an AI-driven decade, rests on the availability of a powerful digital infrastructure. That's absolutely a crucial foundation. Today Sweden has abundance of these companies, close to 100,000 of people employed in these companies, around 3,000 companies. Very few of them, 24 of them, are at a scale with more than 500 employees, and of course most of them are very small businesses. They may not matter that much for sort of their size, but they're actually contributing to 13% of the new jobs being created. They actually also employ a lot of people outside Sweden. So we looked at those and we combined it with sort of the key economic data of their productivity. And it shows that once they get to the scale-up and grown-up scale, they're actually more productive. So they have an outsized contribution to the economy alone from the productivity that they create themselves. But this, to us, isn't really the key metric. The key feature is their ability to be the inventors from taking foundational discoveries and turning it into actionable businesses that make a difference out there. So their impact is much, much broader than the value they create within their firms. They play a crucial role as the first adopters, and thereby we should be very mindful about the conditions for these companies, because they are, so to speak, the canary in the coal mine. If they start to squeak, it means that your AI opportunity is lacking oxygen, and you should fuel it more. So if these companies aren't thriving, and if they're not getting the capital, it's an early warning sign that you should take very seriously. We conducted a survey across all of these types of businesses in Europe, together with Notion Capital of London, and we found that they are all in on adapting and using AI technology. 4 out of 5 are using it, and they use it to drive value in their business across all types of business functions. Some of them, maybe too few, are sort of core generators of really new innovations. We'll meet maybe some of them later today, but all of them are working with AI in some shape or form. We also asked them, what models are you building this on, and is it important for you to have access globally to the best and most powerful models? And they, half of them are saying yes, or a little less than half in the case of Sweden. So they innovate in a sort of a global ecosystem. It's very hard to say what is Swedish AI. I wouldn't know. It's a global available technology that builds on innovations from all over the place, and they need access to that to flourish. We also looked at what areas of business are they in. So it's much more than what would usually be called tech. It's in all kinds of business. They are innovating to help in healthcare, or to help with green transition. They are helping with all kinds of topics. So we cannot sort of look at this and limit it as being a tech sector, because they are everywhere. Looking at the numbers, and Sweden traditionally has captured a lot of venture capital, and all these companies doesn't come from nothing. What we wanted to in this report is zoom in on the part that is venture capital to generative AI ventures, and on that one, Sweden is at the moment getting your share, sort of relatively to your size in the European economy, but Europe overall is not getting anywhere near what they should compared to our economic size. So Sweden is getting its fair share, so to speak, of the European pie, but that European pie is way too small. And Sweden used to sort of hammer above your weight class when it comes to venture capital. When it comes to AI-related venture capital, you're just sort of getting your share. Is that good enough? Okay, I'll leave that to the side. What is also interesting when you debunk the numbers, where within AI are the investment flowing? Well, in Europe, they're broadly flowing for 85% of that into sort of application layer, not into building huge models, because we are now in a different part of the innovation cycle. So now I would say the major importance for economic contribution is to develop precisely where the money goes into applications that turn sort of foundational discoveries into profitable businesses that drive adoption in the rest of the economy. We also did another thing. We looked at these 3,000 Swedish businesses and compared it to sort of the size of Sweden's economy, and then to the success rate, how many make it to the scale-up stage. And we put Sweden relatively well on that map. But it's interesting that, you should think of this as a mountain. So the more you climb up, the better you're performing. So you can either climb a bit in this way or a bit in this way. And I shouldn't teach Swedes about climbing mountains, but you need to move in this direction to get more bang for the buck. And I wouldn't say funny enough, but I would maybe say interestingly, the leading countries in the OECD are all non-EU countries, Switzerland, UK, and the US. So we wanted to invite you to consider taking a step upwards towards this area, and adopting AI and driving that is the key to it. If you do so, you can create, by taking that move up the mountain, you can create a lot of new jobs. They will contribute quite significantly to GDP in Sweden. So there's something on the plate here for you. And in the report, we sort of go through these 5 different dimensions, and I won't have time, but I think it can tee up the debate. Very quickly, some observers say Sweden is actually improving slightly on that one. I think it can be discussed. Falling behind on that one. Regulation and rules are a key question to be discussed. How do we make it actionable? How do we make it not overly burdensome for small startups? And then how do you adjust your framework conditions for venture capital in an AI-driven world? So that would be my invitation to a conversation. Thank you for listening.
Because obviously, I know for a fact that you've done this report in Denmark and Finland already, and in the interest of comparing Sweden to Denmark and Finland, are there any differences between them, or are there, if you wish, leading into our Nordic conversation later, are there inherent Nordic challenges?
Europe overall is sort of this in the second league. In that, Sweden is still, I will not proclaim a change of sort of a capital of tech. I think it's still within Europe. Within Europe, Stockholm is still well positioned to capture that. I must say that cities like London, Berlin, perhaps also Zurich has just more magnetism in terms of attracting the capital into that part of the venture capital space. So I think you have to think of this as a shift. It's a new era of a new technology, and the position that you had in the sort of the world that we are leaving do not necessarily carry over. So the urgency in terms of upgrading your strategies and your policies to be ready for an AI-powered future is, needs to happen pretty pretty fast, because this is a technology that has the potential to be adopted at a faster pace than earlier rounds of technology. And in Europe overall, we broadly miss that. That's what Draghi is telling us. So there's the size of the potential and the urgency of it. That means we need to take our current policies and update them to be ready in an AI-powered world. And we are starting behind because of the heavy burden from all the regulatory decisions that were made many years ago.
And funny you should mention that, because we're getting into that very briefly. And someone mentioned that we're in the middle tech area. I read somewhere that it's all sort of pre-AI. And even if you were big in the middle tech area, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be successful in the AI area.
Absolutely not. So the powerhouses can shift quite quickly, and we cannot take for granted that, I'm saying, it may be Spain. Spain may be a better adopter of AI in the future than Sweden. Ask yourself that question. Should that happen?
Martin, thank you for a great presentation, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Big round of applause. Right, we're moving on, and we're now going to further explore Sweden's AI readiness, and I'd like to welcome up on stage Anna Wikland, Managing Director of Sweden at Google, Abba Kokalari, member of the European Parliament and a member of the Moderate Party, and John Dicklev, CEO at Flower, battery storage optimization business. Welcome.
Thank you.
A question to all of you, actually, and whoever wants to go first, but why is it important that Sweden increases its AI adoption?
Well, I think just what Martin said, like when we looked at the previous report showing the economic growth potential for Sweden, if we are to adopt it and adopt it fast, is big. It's 500 billion Swedish kronas in 10 years. So it's both for competitiveness and productivity. So it's not a question of if, but when, and that's now.
Abba.
I will turn around that question, that what happens if we do not invest in AI, and that clearly it will be, and it is, a security risk if we're not leading in tech and on AI. Because if we're going to make Europe as a secure continent with everything that is going on now with the war in Ukraine, we need to build a strong economy. And how do we do it? We need to make sure that European economies are thriving, that we stop this growth crisis and the innovation gap. So I would say this is a total necessity that we lead on AI.
Do you agree, John?
Yeah, I agree.
As an AI startup, you would.
Yeah, I think if you just look at the productivity gains that can be had, I think it's obvious that if you don't do it, where are you at? Nowhere.
So the report highlights education, infrastructure investments, predictable regulation, and capital raising as necessary staples to become AI ready, if you wish. Anna, 2 decades in leading tech businesses. Where do we start? How do we become competitive here? We're already sort of competitive on a European scale, but how do we really become competitive?
But I think what was interesting and what I liked with this report is to look at the innovative digital businesses. Clearly, like, this is a really important space where Sweden actually is pretty well positioned still. We are in 4th place when it comes to this, and that's both in terms of the number of these type businesses, startups, scale-ups, grown-ups, and how many we also managed to get from that startup phase to the grown-up phase. So we have a good position to start from, but the importance now is how fast we expedite in certain areas to really make sure that we help all of these companies to really, grow further and get more started. And that comes to, people and talent. Make sure that we create an AI-empowered talent pool. It's both for making sure that we provide Swedes with the right skills, but also attract critical talent from abroad. It is about that tech adoption, making sure that we make the infrastructure, the computing power, all of that available to all of these companies. It's about the investments in R&D when it comes to AI to really drive that innovation. And it's about helping out in the regulatory spider web to see how we can make it easier for companies. I think Sweden, in terms of like attracting that VC capital, we are better off than many others. But if we look from a European perspective, that is also very important.
But from Brussels, what are the key challenges you're seeing, and where would you start?
That's the thing. This is not a quick fix. We need to do a lot of reforms, as Anna is saying. And what I think it's the most important that we do, just to say, like, it's been a total shift now, also politically, so that you all know that. For the last 5 years, I spent time in fighting with people and politicians and member states in the EU who see AI as something dangerous that we need to risk mitigate all the time, and mostly fighting against the countries like France, honestly speaking. Now, these people are doing a U-turn now, because we see that this is crucial for European economy. And right now, there are a lot of initiatives going on in Brussels, finally. We're going to have AI factories. One of them will be in Sweden. The Commission launched a big program of 200 billion euros, where 150 million of that would be to mobilize private capital, which is really much needed, and 50 billion is reallocating from the research budget of the EU. And I mean, there are going to be supercomputers. There are a lot of initiatives going on. And here is where we need all of the Swedish startups, scale-ups, and unicorns to be part of that conversation. What I think is really important right now is that we cut the bureaucracy of the legislations that we already have right now. I'm working on the working group in the European Parliament to follow the implementation of the AI Act. And I'm taking a huge fight because I'm afraid that that law will make it more difficult for people to use AI and not incentivize people to use AI. So we need to make sure that the laws that are being created is not hindering innovation. It's not about having a law or not. It's about that it has to be a balance, you know, and that, of course, we will not have anarchy. Everybody could do what they want. We're not there. It's about having clear rules that companies know that, I will follow this one pager of rules, not to navigate on 2,000 pages of regulation. Because this creates costs, this creates making people afraid to use innovation. So cut the bureaucracy. We need to mobilize capital in the EU, and that's a huge thing going on right now. Everybody's looking at Sweden because we have one of the best capital markets in Europe. From a Swedish perspective, we're trying to push for the Swedish model, the ISK-modellen, the investments and saving accounts model, that should be implemented also in other member states, and that we make sure that the French system, the German system, the Italian system, that they put their savings in the stock market and not sleeping in bank accounts. These are capital that could be used for a Swedish startup.
So a tough question on that. I mean, Mathias mentioned here before how they wanted to release the report earlier because whenever they release it, it would be too late. Are you moving fast enough? Because you're removing red tape from the last couple of years alone. Do you feel like the pace, the sense of urgency is there in Brussels, that something needs to be done?
Yes, the EU is its best when it's in crisis. That's when action is being made. But I think that we, from a Swedish perspective, need to lead that. We cannot leave it up to France, with all respect to our French friends. Look at where we are. When you guys moved here, when the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce moved here at this spot, I said yes, because this triangle here is actually the capital of tech in Europe. We have the governments over there, we have the banks over there, we have the startups and scale-ups there and there. I mean, we are the sweet spot where everything is happening. Here are where the unicorns in Europe are being grown. And we need to make sure that we also bring the rest of the EU with us, because that will make Sweden and Stockholm grow even more.
John, Flower is an AI startup, a successful one at it as well. Do you feel like a canary in a coal mine, to quote one of our previous visitors here? What's your Monday morning concern as an AI startup?
Well, it comes back to a lot of things we discussed. I mean, capital is always one of the things that you need to seek after. So I think great example of where Stockholm might be lagging there is that I think I've been to London 5 times this year. I've been to Paris 3 times. So you look outside of Stockholm to find the deepest pockets of capital. But I think on the sort of overall level, there's 3 things that we need to sort of satisfy in order to get like great at AI, and it's sort of access to data. And there I think Sweden is in a sort of sweet spot. Like we have all the sort of public records and all that. I think if you can anonymize them and put that out as a sort of sandbox for companies to play with, will create immense values just from that. We need compute power. And I think it's worth stressing. So we work with AI in order to make clean energy reliable and cheap. So in turn also building the infrastructure that the compute power needs in order to power those AI facilities. So Meta, for example, are building a $10 billion facility in Louisiana. In addition to building that facility, they also need $6 billion in power infrastructure. So I think there's a huge sort of challenge in building out a power system to satisfy the needs of the hyperscalers. And then lastly, it's capital. So how do we get enough capital? And in Sweden, I think more and more we lack in the late stages. So I think our pension systems need to get more involved. I mean, the Canadians are great. They have, for example, OMERS or OTPP, who do direct investment as pension plans, and built up that capability to write really big tickets. So those 3 things.
That's created great capital pools in both the US and in Canada. Abba, on that, I mean, capital. The report also states that there's plenty of capital in Europe. It's just not reachable. And you mentioned one of them, the ISK. What else are you talking about in the EU in terms of unlocking European capital?
Yeah, it's exactly what you said, that we have... I was in a meeting with Christine Lagarde in the European Parliament in the Economy Committee, and then they handed out a piece of paper where we could see clearly that Europeans save in bank accounts and currencies, and the Americans save in the stock market. And I watched it and said, oh, Sweden is more like the US. So what we need to do is that the member states need to do the pension reforms so that the pension funds in the rest of the EU, not only Sweden, are put on the stock market. If we could get a little piece of that money, that would be, I think, enough for the lack of capital that we have for European companies. And I totally agree with you on the access of data. I think that should be sort of like the 5th freedom of the EU, that we unleash the possibilities to use data, of course, in a secure form. But right now, like the GDPR is creating a mess. We need to change that. We have overlapping of laws, which is hindering the sharing of data. So we need to look into that. And last week, the EU Commission launched a reform to cut the bureaucracy of upcoming laws on reporting obligation for sustainability. That will save about 70 billion Swedish crowns in compliance costs for companies. I think we should have that kind of, they call it omnibus, also on the digital sphere. We look into all of the digital laws that are hindering your company and other Swedish companies to use data, so you can spend the money on more engineers and not more lawyers, with honestly speaking.
Lawyers are wonderful people too. But
yes.
so on that, so you mentioned data access, because obviously in the Nordics, I would assume that we're in a unique position collecting data for hundreds of years. Is data access the main unlocking potential from the Swedish government in this case, or what is it?
Yeah, I think the data access could be the one where Sweden can really leverage what we have and sort of keeping good track records of data of our population in a good and safe way. But like providing that, and then maybe like saying like you need to be headquartered in Stockholm or something, and then you can get access to that, and then like keep sort of that positive spin on it. Yeah. I think.
And Anna, you obviously, coming from Google, you bring a global perspective on AI development. Do you feel encouraged by the results in this report? Or do you feel, does it sit unwell?
Well, I've been frustrated for a really long time, and I talked a lot about that last year in terms of, like, as a Swede, rather, like being so proud for so long around like how we have really been like a leading tech country, and then with all of the AI stats, seeing how we're falling behind. That's extremely frustrating, I think. I think with this report, what I think is really, what I like about it is, again, like how it highlights the importance of these companies, and not only to build these companies, but also the spillover effect from them in all different sectors, and how that also can affect in a very good way the productivity and competitiveness in other companies too. Because when these companies do innovate, that is spread to other companies too, making use of it, and also it also inspires others to see what these companies do as early adopters, and hopefully others can follow. So I think there is a lot of like great stuff here. It's not too late, but it's again back to the urgency and to what Mathias said in the AI Commission report. The fact that you actually delivered it sooner, and that has never been done before, just that in itself. But then also, I love that AI for everyone, because that's really like what we need to see now. We see, and there are studies shown that people who actually have started to use generative AI tools are also a lot more positive to AI and to the change, and they see the potential and so forth. And that's what we need to get more people, you know, inspired by, both to continue to build more of these new type companies, but also as change agents in traditional companies. So it's a combination of that, but it's about the speed that is more important than anything else. That we really need to have the government take that leadership from a national perspective for that strategy. We need leaders in every company to think through like how you bring AI into your companies to drive them better. And then it is about that uptake and adoption. And that needs to happen now.
You think that the reception is different between, if you look at Sweden in particular and the foundation of this report? Do you feel like government, because obviously the ranking that I quoted in the very beginning, where we have worse government strategy in AI than Mauritius and Iran, not to single out any countries, but comparatively we would expect to be better there. But do you feel like corporates are better suited for AI, or are we falling behind there as well?
We have been falling behind, what we've seen in stats is that the uptake of AI tools in Swedish companies was lower than in many other European companies in 2023, and in 2024 that hadn't increased or improved. So that has been the situation. Hopefully that is about to change. Another like good fact is if we look at our search data, we see that Swedes are the population in Europe that actually searches most on AI and AI tools, etc. So hopefully something is about to change. But it has been a concern, and I think that's why all of the things we're now talking about that it needs to change, needs to do that really, really fast.
Do you feel like, because you mentioned the spillover effect, and we want to talk about innovative digital businesses, because what if you're not targeted, or if you don't feel like you're in an innovative digital business? Do you get a sense of like the positive spillover effect onto the wider business climate of AI?
Yeah, I do, because and I think that's the important point, that it's these innovative digital businesses, yeah, they do drive a lot of this, and but it's also these great spillover effects that I talked about. So it's not that, you know, all of the other like really important, more traditional Swedish businesses, it's not that it's not important for them, and that they can also, you know, apply AI and really look at how it can be working for them. It's really the opposite. It's about like really taking it in, get inspiration from companies like Klarna, Spotify, Flower, others. But that's back to that leadership. It's not just about the government and the Swedish strategy overall. It's about every company's leaders that needs to take that on themselves too.
And John, you're a Swedish startup, as it were, but in that sense, do you ever feel like you need to look beyond Sweden when it comes to remaining competitive with AI in mind?
I think we're able to attract people to move to Stockholm. I think people are quite keen to move to Stockholm. We have a good reputation. But when it comes to business opportunities, capital, we do go outside of Sweden and Stockholm as well. And it comes down to regulation. Like we're also working with power infrastructure. And coming back to that mindset of speed, like, do we have that mindset of speed? Do we think that this is a really important thing, that we build out our power infrastructure at a quick pace? Not compared to what Germany and Netherlands are saying. Like they are letting go of a lot of red tapes. They're subsidizing the build out much more rapidly than we are in Sweden. So that forces us to go elsewhere.
Are you hopeful of the next couple of months and a government AI strategy?
In the next couple of months, I'm not sure if they move that fast, but maybe, yeah, we'll see.
Arba, final few words, because I know that we're running over here. Final few words from you. Where is Europe heading in this direction? I know it's a pretty open question, but at what point will we be as competitive as the US and China when it comes to AI environment?
I think that the goal has to be that we have to be the world's leading tech continent, and that we gain confidence because we're going to make it. If we work fast, we do the right decisions, and if we work together and have unity. This is really important. Yes, politicians are slow, government is slow, but that's why it's important that all of the companies are pushing so hard for governments to be quicker. And being fast is really key here. And one thing that I would like to see on a personal level also being made, that we had the internet reform in Sweden in the 90s, where everybody got access to broadband and internet. We need to make sure that we give accessibility to young people, to people in schools and students to use AI models, ChatGPT or another competitor, so they can be creative. That is what made Sweden one of the best countries in the world. That's why we were innovative 150 years ago. We had Ericsson, now we have Spotify. Who will be the next one? We need to build for that, the next generation. And we need to do those decisions now.
We've got to work cut out. Anna, Arba, John, thank you so much. Big round of applause. We're moving on. The 5 Nordic countries together make up the 10th largest economy globally. That's something you'll get to hear a lot, I think, in the coming years as well. An article in Dagens Industri signed by 5 ministers from Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and Iceland stated that the Nordics must be Europe's driving force in the AI race. We have a shared culture, they say, high levels of trust, and as small countries, we can act more quickly. Welcome up on stage Morten Friis Møller, Councillor of Digitalization at the Embassy of Denmark in Sweden, Patrick Geyer, Director of Government Relations at AMD, and Mikael Ljungblom, Director of Public Policy and International Relations at AI Sweden. Welcome.
Thanks.
Morten, I'm going to start with you. So the Nordic ministers stating that we must be the driving force. Are we seeing much of that today?
Do we have? Yes, I think we had. I think they, when the ministers met, I think last year in June, discussing AI in Copenhagen, they launched a declaration with targets, setting the Nordics on the map and also be the driving region behind AI. We have been that with digitalization, with public digitalization for many years. Why not taking the advantage of the digital infrastructure we have built up to set new standards for AI. So what happened on the ground is we are moving so rapidly, as the previous speakers has stressed. I think the policy framework and the strategies will always lag behind. So don't wait for the perfect policy framework will arise. Just move ahead. And of course, as Arba put it before, I agree, we need to remove obstacles in the policy framework like GDPR. But meanwhile, I think we should just move on and promote the uptake and the application of AI. But the message here is that don't wait for the strategy to come.
So just run, basically.
Yes, because it will come, and what will the Nordics has put up very ambitious strategies. You mentioned the AI Act. We have digital single market vision. We have Data Act. We have Digital Service Act. What else do we need? Do we need more goals and strategies? Not necessarily. I think just move on. What we need is to implement, and that is exactly the goal we had when we settled down at Nordic Council Ministers a few years ago, also including the Baltics, actually to implement all the political goals we had for the digital future. So moving ahead is a key word here. And time is of the essence, that's right, but don't wait.
So what's the benefit of aligning with across the Nordics here? What is the main benefit of doing that together?
Well, there's a new sense of urgency, right? With the political tensions, the geopolitical tensions, we have a new urgency, right? We also have the Draghi report, also setting out new the awareness that we actually need to move fast, and digitalization is, of course, a very important tool and a way to move forward and also be more competitive, of course. But on a more positive note, I would say the very high level of digital countries we are small countries, but we also front runners when it comes to digitalization. Why not using this foundation also to move into the next stage of digitalization with AI and quantum, etc. So we have a lot to offer, and I think we should not step down on the high level of trust we have created in the digital infrastructure. I think if data is the new oil, I think trust is our goal. And what we also see now, we are stepping back. The deregulation is important when it comes to regulation that disturbs. But there's also a meaning behind the way we regulate. I mean, the civil rights in digital age is absolutely important that we don't step down on this, but actually also use it as a high standard for the digital solutions we see ahead of us. So just in order to move fast, of course, we need to have some fast track, but we also need to use the advantage we have created for many years, for decades. We have built up a very advanced digital infrastructure. We have high quality data sets. I think we should also bear that in mind before just throwing it out and inventing, giving up on the high standards we have created.
So Mikael, from AI Sweden here, so data is the new oil. There's a framework being set up to develop a Nordic AI center. Could you tell us a bit more about that? Will that be a game changer for us?
I mean, I think the Nordic collaboration is one of the tools that we need to use to the maximum, right? I mean, it's not going to be everything, but it's one key tool. And if we can use the structures that we already have with the Nordic Council of Ministers, with this shared culture that was mentioned already, and with the drive to be innovative and be modern countries and actually take more of a lead in the EU, much can be gained. But I think it's the way we're looking at it, it's three main pillars. So one of the pillars is to really share the adoption-driven work that we are doing in all of the different countries. So how do we speed up the uptake of AI? We don't need to invent everything on our own. What has been done in Finland can be used in Sweden, and what is being done in Denmark can be used in Finland, and so on, right? So that is one thing, and I think compliance and all of these interpretations of legislation is a part of that. The second thing, I think, is to really help the governments to become more both visionary and proactive within the EU. Because at the moment, we are always reacting to what is happening and what other countries are proposing or what other parliamentarians are proposing. So we're always sort of on the defense and we're saying, oh, well, no, we're not sure, we don't know. I mean, that is not the way we should do it. We should change this completely around and try to be policy shapers on an EU level. And we think we can do that together. We have enough clout, but we need to set up some kind of structures that can sort of help guide the governments also in terms of policy making, and also help out in terms of how to actually make that happen, because it's a very long-term work to influence the EU. Finally, I think a Nordic AI Center can be a platform for, I think, the most ambitious Nordic projects. So imagine that you have peers that cannot find their own peers nationally. I mean, they can look globally, of course. But if we can set up a sort of a platform where neutral collaboration can be made across the Nordics for really ambitious projects, I think that would be very important.
And how far along are we with the Nordic AI Center?
Not ready, but a bit. So we have a few positive decisions already being made by the Nordic Council of Ministers. They have set aside funding, a part of the funding that we need, which is a really good start. It also means that we can go and get other funding from private sources and so on. I would say the interest from basically all of the countries is immense. So I think the basic pillars are there. We just need to do the work, and it's a bit of a work.
And I assume it's going to be in Stockholm, right?
Let's just say this: we are deciding on a model where we think that there will be employees in all of the participating countries. Then a secretariat has to be placed somewhere, and we have had proposals from the other consortium members of where that should be, and we think that sounds positive. That's where I leave it.
That's very diplomatic.
Well, Patrick, just to add a bit of spice to the conversation, you're ex-Tesla. But do you believe in this Nordic camaraderie?
I mean, I do and I don't. So not just to sort of go along and agree with everything. I mean, I'm Finnish myself, and our current president, when he was foreign minister, was caught on a hot mic coming out of a Nordic Council ministers meeting once, saying to his advisor that what the F was this, and why are we sitting here just drinking coffee? And I think it's up to us to prove that this is not what it is. So I think a lot of Nordic cooperation, or a lot that has been put under the banner of Nordic cooperation, has ended up being glorified kafferep. And we need to avoid that pitfall. So I think, I mean, all the statistics that were laid out here are obviously true. I mean, we are the 10th largest economy to put together. It's a no-brainer that we should work more intensely together. But it's not just solved by having seminars. It's solved by actually figuring out what the real-world work that has real-world impact is. So, I mean, funny enough, this is how small the Nordic region is. Mikael and myself used to work together in the European Parliament almost a while ago. Let's not go into how long ago it was. And I mean, I've been working on EU policy in one way or another since then. When I've been sitting in what Abra mentioned, the work on the Code of Practice on the AI Act, I've been sitting in those meetings. There are a lot of people speaking about the French interests or the German interests. I hear no one speaking about the Nordic interests. There is no concerted lobbying by Nordic governments. There are sporadic things that they do separately, but there's no coordinated effort. So I just want to reiterate Mikael's second point. I couldn't agree more. And I think this is one of the most underutilized leverage points that we have in terms of Nordic collaboration. Actually, not just in AI, in pretty much any policy area. Our countries are extremely similar. If you compare to the other 23 or 22 member states, we have so much more together than pretty much any other group of countries. So yes, there are some differences here and there, but like, let's not focus on them. Let's collaborate on the whatever 90% that we agree on, which is super easy. And in the digital technological space, it's pretty much 99% that we agree on if you look at official positions. But still, we don't really use that leverage. So we need to be a little bit more Machiavellian in Brussels. We need to take our space, not just wait for the others to speak and be the nice kid who, you know, sits in the back waving our hands. And the same applies.
Are you hearing good noise from Brussels? Because I mean, you hear noise, but do you feel like they're grasping?
So I think I mean, this is a very personal opinion, but I mean, I've lived and studied in the US, and I've worked a lot in both the US and Europe. And frankly, I think we still have sort of a lot of cultural baggage in Europe. We still, when there is a problem and we need to solve it, we still look at the government to fund something. That is our go-to tool. When there is a problem, what can we do with taxpayer money? Let's throw money at the problem. And a lot of these things are not that simple. So, I mean, we've mentioned things like capital formation and capital attraction. We've been talking about a capital markets union for at least as long as I've had anything to do with the EU. Ursula von der Leyen mentioned it last summer in her speech. I saw the Commission work program for the first year. Nothing. These are not the politically sexy things. And that's why, unfortunately, there's not really a political incentive to work on them. So yes, someone needs to make sure that capital can flow more smoothly inside of Europe. It's super technical, it's super difficult, but someone needs to do that work, because that's where the problem is. Only 18% of Series A rounds in Europe attract capital from another member state. So that means that 82% of fundraising rounds are purely within that country. I think that is a huge problem, one of the most disturbing stats I found in the Draghi report.
So we hear a lot about red tape. That's always been discussed. You know, regulation, they're deregulating in the Trump administration when it comes to AI as well. But actually, is capital access a bigger problem? What do you think?
Well, absolutely. Access to venture capital is I mean, it speaks for itself. The report, good report we heard about from Implement earlier, it speaks for itself that access to venture capital to scale up. I mean, we can do a lot of things. We have a lot of prototyping in the region. We have a lot of small-scale projects, but to scale up the solutions, it's the next level, and that needs require venture capital, but also require, like for instance, the Nordic Center, someone who actually looks into what's happening on the ground, collecting all these kind of prototyping projects, and also merging them, sharing data models, sharing algorithms, instead of organization having to start over and over again. I mean, we need to share this knowledge in the region, across the region, enable to scale up solutions.
I think, you know, it's not an either-or question. It's everything. Yeah. So it's absolutely true that we have issues. For example, as mentioned earlier, with the GDPR and with the interplay between the GDPR and the AI Act. The AI Act is already in force, and we don't really know what it means. There's a lot of ambiguity there, which obviously creates uncertainty for investors. It creates uncertainty for entrepreneurs, and that's bad. So of course that's true. How big is the impact of one thing or another? It's very, very hard to say, and actually that is also one of Draghi's conclusions. But if 92% of the gap in growth between the US and Europe since the financial crisis can be explained by the lack of large digital players in Europe, I think it's pretty clear that we need to do all of the above. So it's not just, is it regulation or financing, it's those two things and 5 more.
Michael, can I just ask a final question here as well? So we see this editorial in Dagens Industri, 5 Nordic ministers saying X, but then in Brussels they don't join up, or they don't have a strong voice. Is that your sense as well?
I mean, I think if you look at Sweden as one entity, we could do better in terms of how we are strategic in Brussels. So it's not an easy fit to coordinate a lot of countries. So you need to have a structure for this, and you also need to develop policy proposals. You need to develop where you want the EU to actually move instead of just, as I said before, react. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into this, and it's like Arba said before, it's not a quick fix for sure, but we still need to act fast. So you need to have both of those things in mind at the same time.
Gentlemen, I'm really sorry. I'd love to continue for another 20 minutes, but I have to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us on stage.
Thank you.
And as we're always so sensitive when it comes to people's time, we say we're going to finish, we promise we're going to finish, and we will finish. So that concludes our seminar for today. Thank you to all the speakers for joining us today, and thanks to those who presented their reports. Thanks to our Capital Tech partners, Osborne Clark and Henrik and Mikael. Our next event in the Capital Tech series is in April, as I said, with the Swedish Minister for Digitization. I promise that a lot of the takeaways from today's seminar will be posted at that dinner. Do join us for some of our other events in the meantime. Have a great rest of the afternoon, and thank you for joining us.